Why is my hair always... Ah. What will happen with Facebook today? Will we have working internet? Will I be able to see comments on the actual page I'm live from? So far it looks like I'll be able to see the comments once they start. So I am Jax West. This is part 7 of reading The Wrecking Crew by John Farrick. You can find all the other episodes, and we've read the Ken Kratz book before. We've done lots of live videos here. So there should be a tab in your page where you can find our past videos. And let me see, can I get here? Action needed. We recommend you use a resolution of 1920 by 1080 or lower. Hello, David. Interesting. Okay, sorry, I'm getting distracted by things that are popping up here. Where can I... Why is this not giving me now where I can give you the link to where all of our videos are? Sorry, getting distracted. Stream setup. So can I only get that information for the URL for our videos? Before I hit go live. Oh well. But you can get them on our page. Go into our past videos where you can get the other episodes. We are on chapter 24, and it is page 266 out of 361. I typically read for 2 hours. I don't know if I'm going the full 2 hours today. It might just be 1 hour. I guess it's going to depend where we are. If I think it is better to try and just push through, or end it and finish another day. And there's other things I need to address, period. But we'll get to that when we get to it. I'm going to start reading. And as I read, I might miss a question or comment. So, since I'm looking down at the book. But I just wanted you knowing that before I start. And I'm going to try reading today without putting on my glasses, because it seems like my vision is more blurry. Hello, Cindy. Is more blurrier when I put the glasses on. So I clearly need to go get new glasses, even though those are less than a year old. All right, here we go. Chapter 24. Creepy Kratz. Is that what you call an oxymoron? I mean, I know you call it a moron, but do you have to say creepy to go with Kratz? Doesn't just the word Kratz insinuate creepy? All right. Quote, Dear Governor Jim Doyle, I just want to make you aware of some inappropriate questions that Ken Kratz had asked my 17-year-old daughter when we had an appointment with him in July 2010. my daughter had a relationship with, and the name was blacked out, who we found out is a registered sex offender. Unquote. September 21, 2010. Hello, Charlene. The jury that convicted Avery of murder in 2007 was led to believe the Manitowoc County defendant was a sexual deviant monster. Wahaha. In reality, Special Prosecutor Ken Kratz, the man who convicted Avery, was the real sexual monster in the courtroom, based on a 143-page investigative file compiled in 2010 by the Wisconsin Department of Justice, DCI. For background, Kratz became licensed to practice law in Wisconsin in 1985. Now remember what I said before, in Wisconsin you don't have to pass the bar. He worked as an assistant district attorney in La Crosse before being appointed as the Calumet County District Attorney in 1992. He would remain in that position until his forced resignation under personally humiliating circumstances in October 2010. When Kratz was in his 50s, he appeared to be sexually aroused by teenagers, the DCI reports show. Quote, on our meeting with Ken, he had asked my daughter the following questions. Keep in mind these are not word for word. And again, Facebook, if you monitor this, I'm reading this book. So don't blame me for the content of what I'm about to say. This is Creepy Kratz. Who would usually take off your clothes before sex? Referring to my daughter. Do you know what ejaculate means? Would he usually ejaculate in you or not? Or out? About how long did the sex last? Then he proceeded to ask about other sex acts, oral sex, and then he asked her those questions, mouth to penis, mouth to vagina, etc. At the time these questions were going on, I did not feel these were appropriate, as she is a victim of a sex offender, and I thought it was the DA's job to make this as painless as possible for the victim. My client advocate was in the room also, and we discussed this after we left. She felt the same way I did about his questioning. This was before the preliminary hearing, and we don't even know if this will go to trial. Some of those questions I would have a hard time believing a defense attorney would even ask a victim." Unquote. The parent informed the Wisconsin governor that she now has a good idea why Kratz asked her 17-year-old daughter such lurid questions. Quote, "I felt he violated and further victimized my daughter by getting some sick enjoyment out of the answers she gave to his questions. I also felt he was no better than the guy he is trying to put behind bars as a repeat sex offender. I would hope you would remove him from office so that he will not be able to abuse his powers and further victimize anyone else. As my daughter is under the age of 18, I would appreciate it if you would not use my name in any press reports so as to protect her privacy." Unquote. Ken Kratz's recurring and alarming conduct predated Avery's arrest for Teresa's murder back in 2005, though Kratz's behavior intensified after the Avery case because he wanted to portray himself as a famous sex symbol. If Kratz had worked as the local high school janitor or garbage truck driver, it's probably less likely that his constant creepy behavior would have been tolerated. But in a small Wisconsin town like Chilton, Kratz was somebody. As a result, this gave him a great cover to engage in behavior that was unethical and a blemish on the district attorney's office. One woman interviewed by the Wisconsin Department of Justice in 2010 told special agents how she, quote, "first met Kratz 5 years ago when she got in trouble for shoplifting. Kratz was the DA on her case and he charged it out. She said Kratz never did anything inappropriate to her at that time." Unquote. Then, in 2009, Kratz called the woman on her cell phone. The woman told investigators, quote, she had no idea how Kratz had her phone number. Kratz told her that he and his wife were getting a divorce and he wanted to talk to her about things, unquote. After that call, Kratz visited the vulnerable woman at her apartment. Quote, he told her that he knew everything about her, and if she did not listen to him, he could get her jammed up. Kratz talked about how he was into bondage. He said he ties women up, they listen to him, and he is in control. She said he instructed her to give him a blowjob, and she did. Unquote. Rape. The woman was afraid, but she went ahead and performed the sex act upon the district attorney of Calumet County. Quote, he had said that he knew everything about her, and she did not know what that meant. Kratz had such seniority over her, and it was said she had not done anything in Calumet County other than shoplifting 5 years prior. She did not know what Kratz meant. She did not want to take the chance. Unquote. Again, rape. The woman later told the Wisconsin DOJ that, quote, the blowjob happened on her couch and she was bent over Kratz. She said Kratz held her hands behind her back. She stated that Kratz was very strong, unquote. The woman told the special agents, quote, while Kratz was still in her apartment, she went to the bathroom and puked. After Kratz left, she puked her brains out and stayed in bed for about a week. She stated that she had been raped when she was 16 and said this feels a lot like it, unquote. And that's because it is. Her doing it is still, that's not consent. On the day of the sexual tryst, Kratz showed up wearing one of his finest gray suits. When he got to the woman's apartment, he also told her to close the blinds. Quote, Kratz talked about being submissive and being dominant. He said that the man was dominant and would tell the woman what to do, and he asked if she would be willing to be submissive to him. She told Kratz she did not think she would be good at being submissive because she talks a lot. Kratz continued to tell her what he did with women and how he takes control. He said the women have to listen to him or he hits them. Kratz spoke about a woman he has where he ties women, or he spoke about a room he has where he ties women up. Kratz called the room something specific, but she did not recall what he called it, unquote. Prior to driving over to receive the oral pleasure, quote, Kratz told her, I know everything about you. I can make trouble for you. She stated that she was very ashamed of what she did. He's a pig. What he did was wrong. Unquote. It's rape. Although the state's investigative files indicated Kratz forced the woman to perform a sex act upon him, the state of Wisconsin had no interest in making Kratz into a criminal. He was not about to be branded as a sexual criminal or a rapist. Quote, Kratz gave her an order to give him a blowjob, unquote, the reports state. Quote, she said he told her to ask his permission to give him a blowjob, and she did. Kratz then put his hands behind her head. She had to unzip Kratz's pants. She said he gave her instructions and told her what to do the whole time. She said she had never known what the term crack whore meant until then, but that is what she felt like, unquote. On that occasion, Kratz also indulged himself in a plethora of alcoholic beverages, pounding down beer after beer before driving himself home. Quote, while Kratz was at her apartment, she continued to get him more beers, and he had 4 or 5 of them. She did not drink with Kratz. During the sex act, Kratz called her a bitch. He said, "That's not how you do it, bitch." She said he had all the power and all the control. After the sex act, Kratz stayed at the apartment and drank 3 more beers. He asked how she felt about being submissive, and she said she could not do it. Kratz also talked about his wife and how she did not want to be with him anymore, unquote. Shocker. Oh, hello, Kat. And Jen. Glad there's no snacks, yes. The woman told state investigators how, quote, he had grabbed her boobs and pulled her hair. She said Kratz touched her breasts under her clothing and she was a fool to have let him in, unquote. There was also something else the woman recalled. It involved money. Quote, when Kratz left her apartment that night, he left $75 on the kitchen counter. She did not see the money until after Kratz left. She believed the money was given to her for what she did. When she was not answering Kratz's phone calls, he asked if she wanted to give the money back to him. Kratz became angry about the money, stating that it was a lot of money and wanting it back, unquote. In the end, the woman donated the $75 to a local church. In the following days, Kratz became a stalker. Quote, Kratz called her 40 to 50 times after the incident, but she would not take his calls. She said he came to her apartment a couple of times, but she pretended she was not home, unquote. Around the Appleton and Fox Valley area, Kratz regularly preyed upon a number of women, including women more than half his age. One was Renee Braun, who spoke with the DCI in 2010. The two met through the website Craigslist, but she was reluctant to pursue his advances. Quote, Kratz questioned why she did not like older men, and he told Braun he had money. Braun told DCI agents that Kratz was her father's age, and that was kind of creepy to Braun. Braun further stated that Kratz never told Braun he was married, unquote. Braun reckoned they exchanged about 10 text messages starting in 2009. At the time, she was 27. In some of his texts, Kratz wrote, quote, I will treat you nice. You can be with an older man. We can be good friends. He texted, do you know who I am? I am Kenneth Kratz, the guy who prosecuted Stephen Avery. Braun says she was not impressed and determined that Kratz was weird. Is it cutting off for the other people here as well? Sorry, Jen, because it's not cutting off for me, allegedly. Braun reckoned they exchanged... Oh, wait, I read that already. Braun stopped the contacts with Kratz before they ever met because Braun realized he was too old for her, unquote. Another young woman also contacted the DCI in regards to Kratz. Maria Ruskowitz was from Marinette, Wisconsin, and a third-year law student at Oklahoma City University School of Law. Her first bad experience with Kratz happened in 2008, the year after the Avery trial. She was attempting to get a pardon for a previous drug conviction. Kratz and the judge provided her with letters in support of her pardon. Quote, D.A. Kratz wrote Ruskowitz back, telling her that she should make an appointment with his office to meet with him. Ruskowitz stated that the letters from D.A. Kratz were very professional, unquote. Not realizing she was being manipulated, she eventually came to Chilton to meet Kratz in person. It's cutting off for you too, Cindy. Quote, she recalled that he was not wearing a suit, but was wearing a black shirt with a deck of cards on it, and they talked about playing poker. D.A. Kratz and Ruskowitz then talked about what advice he had to give her. As expected, Kratz steered the conversation toward his favorite topic. D.A. Kratz started asking her questions related to sex, posing different scenarios, and asking what she thought of them. For example, he asked her what she thought about a boss and a secretary having sex, or a babysitter and child having sex. Oh my God. He also asked what she thought about people of different ages having sex. Ruskowitz stated that she thought D.A. Kratz's questions were weird, but she thought he was just trying to see if she was tough enough to be a prosecutor. Unquote. Being naive, she accepted one of Kratz's professional business cards. It contained Kratz's secret cell phone number. She made the mistake of sending him a text, thanking him for making... Thumbs up, Nana. Okay. She had inadvertently opened the door into her life for Kratz. Quote, Ruskowitz stated that D.A. Kratz started texting her back about a week later. It was in one of these texts that he asked how she would please him between the sheets. Gross. The young woman got her uncle involved and later wrote a letter informing Kratz he needed to keep their communications on a professional level. Kratz laid low for about 3 months, and then, like a nasty, prickly yardweed, he reemerged. Quote, he sent her a text stating that now they had to meet in person. Ruskowitz stated that this text was out of the blue. She compared the situation to a domestic abuser who has been threatening to beat their victim, but then suddenly shows up at the victim's door. Ruskowitz and D.A. Kratz never did meet again in person, unquote. Thank you, David. State investigators asked the Marinette woman whether, quote, there was any type of coercion from Kratz that she should have sex with him in exchange for his support of her pardon. Ruskowitz stated that D.A. Kratz never said anything like that, but she felt it was implied because of the timing of his text to her. She said she thinks he is a dirtbag, and she believes there are plenty more victims out there, unquote. The DOJ documents showed that, quote, Attorney Kratz has rationalized his poor behavior by confessing to various addictions, to Ambien, to Vicodin, to Xanax, and to sex, though he fails to point to either medical records or expert medical testimony that would explain the exact nature and severity of his conditions or how they may have affected his ability to conform his behavior to ethical rules. But regardless of how we view Attorney Kratz's behavior, as an involuntary byproduct of addiction or as a willful blindness to professional standards, the ugly picture painted by the record remains the same. The recommended 4-month suspension is deserved, unquote. Ken Kratz might still be holding down office in Calumet County to this day, if not for the bravery of Kaukauna resident Stephanie Van Grohl, who had just turned 25 around the time she visited the Kaukauna Police Department to file a report back on October 22, 2009. Quote, I met with Mr. Ken Kratz, the district attorney who is handling my ex's case, unquote. Her police statement reads, quote, I went to his office to decide what was going to be done with Shannon, my ex, after I left there. He sent me a text saying that it was nice talking to me and that I have such potential. I said thank you and thought that would be it. Since that text, I've received at least 20 plus messages. I talked to one of my friends and they told me to do something about it, so here I am. I'm afraid that if I don't do what he wants me to do, he will throw out my whole case and who knows what else, unquote. The following are excerpts from some of Kratz's text messages to the young domestic violence victim whose ex-boyfriend had his criminal case pending in Kratz's office. Quote, I wish you weren't one of this office's clients. You'd be a cool person to know. I hope you feel better soon. Do you need me to bring you some chicken soup? No text today? I'm feeling ignored. Are you even up yet? How about a margarita? That has some fruit juice in it. Seriously, I hope you feel better soon. Please keep in touch. It's maybe not the wisest thing I can do, but you are awfully sweet. Just don't tell anyone, okay? You the kind of girl that likes secret contact with an older married elected DA, the riskier the better? Or do you want to stop right now, which you spelled no, Know, before any issues? I need direction from you. Yes, you are a risk taker and can keep your mouth shut, and you think this is fun. Or you think a man twice your age is creepy, so stop. I'm sure the latter. Either way, I think you are very nice. I am very smart, but no, this is all up to you and really does depend how close to the edge you live. Still wondering if I am worth it? Can I help you answer any questions? Why would such a successful, respected attorney be acting like he's in 7th grade? Are you worried about me? Are you serious? Okay, that's it? Are you in a board meeting? You are beautiful and would make a great young partner someday, but I won't beg. I'm serious. I'm the attorney. I have the $350,000 house. I have the 6-figure career. You may be the tall, young, hot nymph, but I am the prize. Start convincing. Finally, an opinion. I would not expect you to be the other woman. I would want you to be so hot and treat me so well that you'd be the woman. Are you that good? You forgot to write me for the last time saying you could never give me enough attention to steal me away, and you are so modest that you wouldn't know how to. And that you may look good at first glance, but women that are blonde, 6 feet tall, legs and great bodies don't like to be shown off or to please their men. Unquote. 2 days earlier, Van Groll met with Kratz at his office to be interviewed about the ongoing prosecution of her ex-boyfriend for trying to choke her to death. Quote, Van Groll indicated that during the interview, she confided in Kratz about the relationship she had with her boyfriend and the abuse her boyfriend bestowed upon her. Van Groll indicated that at the end of the interviews on October 20, she thought it was funny that Kratz asked her if she would mind if he dropped the charge from a felony to a misdemeanor. Van Groll then stated that she told Kratz that strangling someone was a felony in the state of Wisconsin. Unquote. About 10 minutes later came the first of a barrage of text messages, thumbed out by Kratz. Quote, the text messages continued over a period of the next 2 days. Van Groll indicated she felt vulnerable because she had just told Kratz the relationship that Van Groll was in, and she felt Kratz was taking advantage of that situation. Unquote. By October 30, 2009, the Wisconsin Department of Justice got involved in the case. The DCI's Peter Thelen reached out to an agent he knew had a close, long-time professional relationship with Kratz. It was Tom Fassbender. Quote, Peter Thelen had contact with Special Agent Thomas J. Fassbender, who confirmed, and the phone number was redacted in the official police report, was a cellular telephone number used by Calumet County District Attorney Kenneth Kratz. Fassbender had prior contacts with Kratz and said said number when making telephone contact with Kratz in an official capacity. Unquote. Now that the Wisconsin DOJ was involved, however, the criminal case that had been turned over to them was destined to disappear. 3 days after the conversation with Fassbender, the special agent in charge at the Appleton office got a call from Kratz, who is listed on the investigative reports as being, quote, a person of interest, unquote. Quote, Peter Thelen received a telephone call from Calumet County District Attorney Kenneth Kratz regarding this case, unquote, reports from November 2, 2009 show. Quote, he inquired as to whether there was still a criminal investigation going on regarding this, and SAIC Thelen responded no, that the case was done as far as Special Agent in charge Thelen was concerned, unquote. Kratz wanted reassurance the case was closed, which is what he got. Quote, Mr. Kratz then offered to apologize to Stephanie if Special Agent in charge Thelen were able to mediate this. Thelen told Kratz that he would pass this information along. Then Kratz made a second request. Mr. Kratz mentioned that he would like to keep this out of the media if possible. Thelen advised Mr. Kratz that the complaint originated from another agency and DCI was obligated to investigate, at which time Mr. Kratz said that he understood, unquote. 2 months later, Kratz was up to his dirty old tricks again. Dawn M. King of Green Bay, 46, met Kratz through the Match.com dating site in January 2010. It was Kratz who pursued her rather than the other way around. Quote, King stated that she had reservations about D.A. Kratz from the beginning of his contacts with her, starting with the name he used on his Match.com profile, which was X-Boy-Toy1. King stated that she did not know who D.A. Kratz was when he first started contacting her. She knew he was an attorney because that fact was written in his Match.com profile, unquote. On January 23, 2000, she agreed to meet Kratz for dinner at the Black and Tan Grill in Des Peres, which is a nice suburban community along the Fox River next to Green Bay. The Black and Tan was also an upscale restaurant. Quote, King said that D.A. Kratz talked about himself during their dinner. He talked about going to Las Vegas, poker, his wife, and his divorce. He also talked about cases he was working on, unquote. During the dinner, a detective called Kratz, and Kratz had no qualms about discussing the criminal case in front of her, even though she told him she understood if he needed to step away to take the call and talk in private. Quote, but he continued to talk in front of her. King gathered from the conversation that she heard that the detectives were searching some place at the time. D.A. Kratz and the detective were talking about looking for evidence and searching a car and the trunk of a car. The detective wanted to bring the person in for questioning, but D.A. Kratz told the detective to wait until they found more physical evidence. After the dinner date, she searched the internet for information and learned that there was a missing woman from Chilton. During dinner, D.A. Kratz told King that the detectives were at the boyfriend's house searching. D.A. Kratz made some reference to her about going to the crime scene with him and made a comment about her wearing heels. King said she did not want to be traipsing through a crime scene. It turned out that the case involved a murder. A boyfriend was accused of killing his girlfriend, and the crime scene apparently crossed county lines. Quote, King stated that D.A. Kratz drank a lot the night of their date. She said they had first met in the downstairs bar and had one drink there, and then they shared a bottle of wine with dinner. King stopped drinking after dinner, but D.A. Kratz continued to drink several more drinks in the bar after dinner while we listened to a live band there. King stated that D.A. Kratz was not worried about drinking and driving, and he thought he was above the law. D.A. Kratz told King that he would not have a problem if he was stopped while driving home because he had friends, unquote. I find it hard to believe he has friends. The next day, the text messages started. Quote, they found a body, Kratz texted her. King said she thought it was weird and absolutely wrong that D.A. Kratz was telling her this information about his professional work. She said she was surprised and shocked that he would divulge such information being in the position that he was, unquote. If that wasn't weird enough, Kratz informed her about the upcoming autopsy for the victim and invited her to accompany him to the morgue. He invited Kratz to go along with him as long as she would wear heels and act as his girlfriend. King stated that she thought this was wrong on so many levels, unquote. But the texts did not stop. Quote, bored in court, unquote, Kratz kept messaging her. In her letter, she wrote to Governor James Doyle. King added, quote, if I didn't answer his texts immediately, he would become insecure and question why I hadn't responded and would attack me or my character. He would remind me of who he was, how he had prosecuted the biggest case around here, and what a prize he was. After a few days of contact, I finally told him not to contact me anymore. He complied." End quote. Other women who were victims of Kratz were downright terrified he might come back and harm them if their names were publicized by the Wisconsin DOJ. They agreed to be interviewed by police investigators only on the condition their identities remain a secret in any official criminal investigation files. One such woman was victimized by Kratz in 1999. Evidence that Kratz's creepy and dangerous behavior was going on long before he got involved in prosecuting Avery. One woman was involved in a domestic dispute with her husband in 1999. The confidential informant suffered a black eye and a bump on her head from her abusive husband. Kratz was the prosecuting attorney on her husband's case. Quote, "The confidential informant indicated that shortly after the meetings with Kratz would email the CI with comments such as, 'A girl like you wouldn't be attracted to a guy like me, bald and overweight.'" Oh, God. You and me both, Kat. The emails turned into phone calls initiated by Kratz. Quote, "The CI indicated on one occasion Kratz came over to the CI's house with the CI's approval, and that the CI and Kratz sat on the couch. The CI indicated that Kratz put his hand under the CI's skirt and he caressed the CI. The CI also indicated that Kratz had not removed any of his clothing. While the CI and Kratz were seated on the couch, Kratz's girlfriend or fiancé called, and the CI learned that it was the girlfriend's or fiancé's birthday. The CI believes that Kratz forgot. Once Kratz got off the phone with the girlfriend or fiancé, Kratz called a florist to have flowers sent to his girlfriend or fiancé. The CI indicated that upon Kratz leaving the CI's residence, Kratz got stuck in the snow in the CI's driveway and had to be pulled out by the neighbor." Unquote. The woman also gained insight into Kratz's dark mind. Quote, "Very early in the conversations or emails with Kratz made it very clear that he liked women to be submissive." Sound familiar? Kratz would call the CI at work, and the CI was not allowed to say anything, and that was part of the game. The CI indicated women weren't allowed to say anything or make any noise. The CI just had to listen to his sexual scenarios on the phone. Kratz had 4 or 5 sexual scenarios that he would request the CI choose out of the scenarios that the CI would like done to the CI. Kratz also offered to send the CI to Chicago, to learn how to be submissive. Unquote. Kratz's contacts with this woman occurred while Kratz was in the midst of a full-blown criminal prosecution of the woman's husband for domestic abuse. Quote, "Kratz also asked if the CI liked to be videotaped or if they could be watched by someone else. Kratz indicated this would only be for his private viewing. Kratz indicated Kratz had a private room at his house that no one went into the room except Kratz. The CI was led to believe by Kratz that Kratz had other videotapes of himself or other females being involved in sexual activity." Unquote. The woman told Wisconsin special agents that her lawyer had told her up front that Calumet County had a reputation for usually awarding custody of minor children to the father, not the mother. Quote, "The CI reiterated that the only reason the CI agreed to engaging in the phone conversations and emails, along with one sexual contact with Kratz, was because Kratz was prosecuting the CI's husband, and the CI was led to believe that Kratz could influence the decision over the custody of the CI's children." Unquote. So gross. About 5 months later, the woman had moved away when she got a phone call at work. Quote, "The CI was surprised that Kratz had tracked the CI down. Kratz asked if the CI was married or seeing someone. Kratz indicated that he had relatives in the area where the CI was presently living." Unquote. The two special agents from the DIA who interviewed the woman made the following observations in their summations of her interview. Quote, on several occasions, the CI cried and indicated that the CI had been second-guessing the CI self for a long time regarding the CI not reporting the conduct of Kratz back when it happened. The CI indicated that the only reason the CI came forward at this time was to let Van Grohl know that Van Grohl wasn't alone and that Kratz had conducted this type of behavior with other females, unquote. In 1998 or early 1999, Menasha resident Connie Palm ran a personal ad in the Appleton Post-Crescent newspaper. She was in luck, bad luck. The male suitor who responded to her singles ad happened to be Kratz. During a handful of introductory phone calls, Kratz made it a point to make sure she knew she was conversing with the district attorney of Calumet County himself. Quote, Palm and Kratz met for coffee at Burger King, oh how romantic, in Kaukauna in 1998 or early 1999. After having coffee, Kratz said he would show Palm where he worked, and they left Burger King together in Kratz's car, unquote. But first, Kratz wanted to take her by his house so he could change. Quote, Kratz talked to her about his past marriages and the details of the demise of his second marriage. He then went into a diatribe of dirty talk, going into detail about what he wanted in a wife or girlfriend sexually, and about past experiences he had with numerous women, unquote. After visiting Kratz's house for an hour, they drove toward the government municipal building in the area of Darboy and Sherwood. Quote, while they were parked near the municipal building, Kratz touched the back of Palm's hair. Palm said she backed away from his touch and he stopped touching her. Kratz told Palm again that he works with victims and he understands, unquote. Eventually, Kratz drove the woman back to the Burger King so she could retrieve her car. Quote, Palm said that during the date, Kratz told her a couple times not to talk to Harbor House, a domestic violence shelter, where she went for services and support, about him and what he was telling her. When he was talking about the personal things that he prefers and about beating women in hotels. Quote, Palm stated that she felt almost as if Kratz were confessing to her about what he did with other women and wanting her to okay his actions. Palm said that Kratz talked about a lot of things during their date, but she only wrote in her letters the details that she could truly remember. Palm stated that during the date she was only thinking about how fast she could get home, unquote. Kratz made the mistake of opening up too much about his deviant side. Quote, she said he told her he met women on the internet. They talked about what they expected and they agreed to meet at a hotel. Kratz told Palm he did not tell these women his real name or what he did for a living, and he met them in hotels out of town. Kratz also told Palm that he looked at pornography and he felt that it was an addiction because he stayed up until the early morning watching it all, unquote. On September 22, 2010, Palm sent a letter to Wisconsin Governor Jim Doyle relaying some of her humiliating experiences with Kratz to the governor. Quote, once we arrived at his home, he offered to give me a tour and made emphasis upon showing his bedroom where he slept. I then sat down in the living room to wait for him to change clothing, which he did. He sat down in the living room and began another conversation where he shared information about past marriages. I found he had been married twice. Then he shared intimate details about why those marriages ended. Then he went into details of the second marriage, and he was very explicit. He said they had done a threesome with the neighbor guy down the road, and his wife felt that the neighbor had more to offer her. Quote, you have probably heard about my dark side, unquote, Kratz told Palm. Quote, he shared details about many past experiences and said that he met a lot of women on the internet. Then would meet them at hotels, out of town, of course. And he did not give them his real name or profession. He gave specifics about liaisons, going into great detail about one woman in particular who wanted him so bad and was so turned on that she was dripping on the bed. Ugh. He said this several times. It would not get off that particular sentence or woman, unquote. Quote, do I make you nervous? Unquote, Kratz asked Palm. Quote, he went on to share further details about that he does different things with the women, like role playing, even using a term I had heard before but can't remember now. But he explained in great detail that it involves hurting each other physically, and there is a common word agreed upon ahead of time, like Rumpelstiltskin, and when one partner says the word, the activity is to stop, unquote. In Palm's letter to the governor, she revealed that over the years it became common knowledge amongst the powerful people who were movers and shakers around Calumet County that Kratz's behaviors were to be tolerated. Quote, as the years went on and I became employed with the Harbor House domestic abuse programs in June 2002 and got to know other professionals, I learned of the prevalence of knowledge of Ken Kratz's reputation, rumors, and what I felt was a sick collective social tolerance, oblivion to look the other way of this type of behavior from a man who holds a highly regarded public office, unquote. But there was one thing Kratz kept saying over and over during his one and only creepy date with the Menasha woman he met at Burger King. Quote, I am uninhibited. I am uninhibited. He went on to say that he would pay to take me to a spa and be pampered all day to get a manicure, pedicure, get my hair done, and a bikini wax. And he would tell the girls at the salon what he would like done to me down there. He asked me a couple of times to share my fantasies with him, and I would not. I have to wonder if putting pictures of Ken in the newspapers in various poses, full body, side view of face, front view, or in other attire like jeans, pictures of him over the years with dates or years attached that he served as DA and assistant DA and aged or changed in appearance might trigger the memory of other women throughout the state of Wisconsin and nearby states. I have to think there are many women out there affected by him, unquote. Hello, Natalie. By November 2010, the Wisconsin Department of Justice had seized Kratz's office computer. For the line reading criminal offense, the report indicated, quote, misconduct in public office, unquote. On the line marked suspect, the name listed was Kenneth Kratz. 10 different women were listed in the documents as complainants. The DCI report indicated Kratz used the following screen names: Ex-Boy Toy 1, Appleton Attorney, and Appleton Attorney, but shortened. The following search terms were sought: bondage, dominant, submissive, role-playing. Betcha he and Bobby, the killer, get along real well. Quote, former Calumet County DA Kratz is accused of sending inappropriate text and email messages to women, including victims in active cases he was working on. Currently looking for a preview of text documents and possibly internet dating sites and pornography, if excessive, unquote, the report stated. But in the end, criminal charges of misconduct in public office were never filed against Kratz by the Wisconsin DCI. He's a raper. Chapter 25, Computer Disk. It is page 285 out of 361. On the long-standing obligations in the American criminal justice system is the duty of criminal prosecutors to provide a complete inventory of their side's evidence to the defendant and the defendant's lawyer. And that evidence also includes reports and information that is known as exculpatory. In other words, police reports and investigative files that may shed may shed lead on other potential perpetrators who were also being investigated for the same crime. Exculpatory information would consist of investigative details the police officers and lead investigators had in their files. The notion of police officers and prosecutors hiding files and reports from the criminal defendant, notably a murder defendant, is frowned upon by the American justice system, and there is long-standing judicial precedence and case law that firmly establishes that such negligent and prejudicial behavior by police detectives and district attorneys cannot be tolerated in a court of law. Oftentimes, however, information and evidence about the over-the-top criminal prosecutors who run roughshod over the rights of the accused never sees the light of day. After all, the prosecution is the one and only side in complete control of the evidence. Unless the defense gets lucky or has a mole on the prosecution team feeding them information, outright proof of prosecutors destroying files or hiding evidence that could change the outcome of a criminal defendant's case don't regularly arise in America's judiciary. It has in Melissa Kaluzinski's case. In the spring of 2018, something is in my eye. Avery's dogged post-conviction lawyer, Kathleen Zellner, made a discovery that rocked her world. It was a bombshell piece of evidence that she realized Avery's original criminal trial lawyers, Buting and Strang, did not know about. It was evidence that should have been tendered to them back in 2006, long before their client stood trial for Teresa's murder. It was a crucial item of evidence that Special Prosecutor Ken Kratz and his loyal lead investigator Tom Fassbender did not want Avery's side to gain access to. On April 21, 2006, Fassbender and Mark Wiegert seized the personal computer and a dozen computer disks from Barbara Yanda's home. They wrote their reports in such a way to make it appear as if the computer belonged to Brendan Dassey and that their evidence gathering focused on the 16-year-old boy. Nothing could be further from the truth, though. The next day, the computer was delivered to Grand Chute Police Detective Mike Velli by Fassbender. Velli was, and I don't know for sure how to pronounce his name, Velli was considered the region's law enforcement expert on computer forensics in criminal investigations. By May 11, 2006, Velli returned the evidence back to Fassbender, who then decided to sit on the information that way the defense lawyers didn't have it in a timely fashion. 7 months later, some of the information that was extracted from the Dassey computer was shared with Strang and Buting. Okay, sorry. The most noteworthy details and evidence from the computer investigation, interestingly, was never to be shared with Avery's trial lawyers. Quote, on December 14, 2006, 218 days after the completion of the Velli final investigative report, trial defense counsel was first provided with the Fassbender report to Prosecutor Kratz, unquote. Quote, the Kratz letter does not refer to any enclosed CD titled Dassey's Computer Final Report Investigative Copy, unquote. The report furnished to Avery's lawyers was misleading in so many ways, Zellner contends. Quote, the Fassbender report refers to the examination of Brendan Dassey's computer. There is absolutely no proof that the computer belonged to Brendan Dassey, and there is proof that it was primarily used by his brother Bobby, the killer. The Fassbender report minimizes the number of violent pornographic images, the severity of the violent pornographic images, and incriminating word searches that demonstrate an obsession with inflicting pain on young females, dead female bodies, and mutilating female bodies. The Fassbender report also ignores the timeline of the images being viewed, which excludes other family members and incriminates Bobby, the killer, unquote. Instead, the report was designed to ensure Strang and Buting had no clue, no idea, that Bobby was a sexually disturbed deviant, which would have raised strong suspicions that he, not Avery, was involved in Teresa's murder, according to Zellner. After all, it's an undisputed fact. Some of Teresa's charred bones were found inside Bobby Dassey's burn barrels. That's not true. Not true. Quote, the Fassbender report refers to a few messages of Brendan's about whether he thought Mr. Avery was guilty of the Halbach murder, while ignoring Bobby's, the killer's, prolific, graphic, and sexually aggressive messages to underage girls. The Fassbender report conspicuously omits the day of May 10, 2006, which is when Detective Velli completed the Velli final investigative report and downloaded it onto a CD, unquote. Keep in mind the prosecution side, Fassbender and Kratz, had the Bobby Dassey, the killer, computer files in May 2006. The two men sat on the evidence in June, July, August, September, October, and November. All of those months passed and nothing was shared with the trial lawyers representing Avery. Then, in December, Kratz wrote up his letter and turned over some information to Buting and Strang. But it was not everything, and it left out the most revelatory information. Quote, on December 15, 2006, Prosecutor Kratz sent Attorney Strang an itemized inventory of our Stephen Avery file. In the inventory, Prosecutor Kratz references 7 DVDs, contents of Brendan Dassey's computer, unquote. Again, this statement is completely misleading to the defense because 7 DVDs were disclosed that could not be opened without the EnCase program, but the CD, which required no specialized software, was not disclosed, unquote, Zellner uncovered in 2018. Back on December 19, 2006, Strang enlisted his paralegal to send the 7 DVDs to his partner on the case, Buting. Quote, but no CD is referenced in her letter because trial defense counsel had not been provided with the CD, because Special Agent Fassbender kept the CD in his possession. Trial defense counsel only received the 7 DVDs, unquote, Zellner said. Meanwhile, the clock was ticking toward the looming murder trial, the trial Kratz liked to call the biggest murder trial in the history of Wisconsin. Quote, there was not time for trial defense counsel to retain a forensic computer expert and perform the forensic analysis on the 7 DVDs, which took Detective Veely 16 days by the January 10, 2007 due date for trial defense counsel to file their State versus Denny motion. Additionally, because they were not provided a CD with the Velli final investigative report, which contained his criteria, word searches, registry, recovered pornography, internet searches, Windows registry, and all MSN messages, they could not effectively use this information to impeach Bobby, the killer, or establish a motive to murder Ms. Halbach pursuant to Denny, unquote. Then, on the eve of Avery's trial, Strang got a document from Kratz called Stipulation Project. Kratz mentioned in his January 25, 2007 correspondence there was a computer analysis of Steve, Teresa, and Brendan's computer hard drives, and Detective Velli, quote, found nothing of evidentiary value. We may wish to introduce the fact that they looked. This stipulation eliminates Officer Velli as a witness, unquote. 5 days later, Manitowoc County Judge Patrick Willis rejected the effort of Strang and Buting to utilize State versus Denny to present an alternative suspect as part of their case to show Avery was innocent. Quote, on January 30, 2007, Judge Willis denied trial defense counsel's Denny motion because there was no proof of motive for the murder provided by trial defense counsel, unquote, Zellner said. Another week later, jury selection got underway. Then a decade later, on July quote, on July 15, 2017, a new Brady witness, Kevin Romlo, it was brought to my attention last night that we have Kevin Romlo here in Gossip and that he was posting on a thread yesterday. I do not know if it is the Kevin Romlo that is referred to right here. When you look at their profile, it certainly looks like it would be him. I just, how do I want to word this? I hope that most people that are here in Gossip are supporters and not fans. And so I don't want people to push him into saying things that could possibly hurt the case. Because, you know, all Making a Murderer Facebook pages, YouTubes, Twitters, all of it, people watch. You know, Kathleen Zellner has people that are in this group and watch what is said here and everywhere. I do not want anything this person posts able to be used against Stephen. So I want people to tread lightly. And if Mr. Romlo does watch this video, if you could reach out to me privately, and my name is Jax West, or so you can message Jax West privately, or you can message this page, MAM Gossip, or Stephen Avery Project, or if you want to email me, it is official Stephen Avery Project at gmail.com. I want to make sure that you're protected as well as the case is protected, and to make sure that you have the go-ahead from Kathleen Zellner that you say anything publicly. I would love to speak to you on the day you saw Andy Colborn at the Senex station. I would be happy to do a live video with you, or something in writing if that it works better for you. But I only will do that if Kathleen Zellner is okay with it, because again, the top priority is making sure that nothing hurts Stephen's chances to be free. So please, all of you who comment in that thread, and if you're going to question Mr. Romlo, please keep that in mind. Yes, Natalie, and I believe people can be a supporter and a fan. Absolutely. I mean fan in a bad way. Fanatic type thing, that their thing is only about the show or the Avery family, and you know, they say they care about Stephen's innocence, but bottom line is they want to hear about the show, you know what I mean? So since his name was just brought up here, it reminded me, because I was sent screenshots that he was posting here like midnight last night. So, and I know not that many people watch this video, so it might be something I have to do. You know, we need to do a Ask Jax Anything freeform thing too, but that just reminded me of it. All right, back to reading. In two affidavits came forward and described how he had remembered seeing Ms. Halbach's RAV4 on November 3 and 4, 2005 by the old dam on State Highway 147 and reporting this to Sergeant Andy Colborn. The RAV4 was located within half a mile of Scott Toddock's former and current residences. Unquote. Then on July 31, 2017, Zellner retained forensic computer expert Gary Hunt to analyze the 7 DVDs taken from Bobby Dassey, the killer. Lynn, I don't know if you've read the thread, but I believe in there he says that Colborn was in uniform and driving a police vehicle or a sheriff's vehicle or whatever. Quote, Mr. Hunt examined the 7 DVDs and discovered an abundance of violent pornography and created a timeline that linked a majority of the searches for violent pornography to Bobby, the killer, unquote. On November 13, 2017, Zellner met with Buting and Strang to get their reaction. Quote, Attorney Buting states that neither the CD nor the Veli final investigative report was ever disclosed to trial defense counsel. Attorney Buting points out that the CD was never logged into evidence, but instead Special Agent Fassbender kept the CD in his possession. This explains why trial defense counsel never saw the CD when they reviewed all of the evidence in the case at the Calumet County Sheriff's Department, unquote. Over the course of several months, Zellner reached out to one of the former prosecutors who assisted Kratz in Avery's prosecution, Assistant Wisconsin Attorney General Tom Fallon. She inquired about the missing CD starting on November 14, 2017. Lynn, I think it's a thread that is about the newspaper delivery guy, where his comment is in. So I believe that that's what the OP is. That so, and it should be near the top of the page because there was recent comments on it. Okay, where was I? All right, I think I was here. Over the course of several months, Zellner reached out to one of the former special prosecutors who assisted Kratz and Avery's prosecution. I know I've read this already, but it's where I left off. Assistant Wisconsin Attorney General Tom Fallon. She inquired about the missing CD starting on November 14th, 2017, then on December 4th, 2017, and finally again on March 20th, 2018. Finally, there was a breakthrough. It came on April 17, 2018. Quote, Attorney Fallon finally produced a CD which contained 2,449 pages, unquote, Zellner said. Quote, on May 25, 2018, current post-conviction counsel filed a motion to supplement the record on appeal with the CD produced by Attorney Fallon, unquote. In turn, Gary Hunt, Zellner's computer expert, determined that Bobby Dassey, the killer, computer was manipulated by someone out to destroy and conceal data on that computer. But why would someone do that? Quote, Mr. Hunt, after his examination of the 7 DVDs and the CD, made the following conclusions. Mr. Hunt detected 8 periods in 2005 which are relevant to the murder of Teresa Halbach when computer records are missing and presumably deleted from the Dassey computer. August 23 to 26, August 28 to September 11, September 14th and 15th, September 24th to October 22nd, October 23rd to the 24th, October 26th to November 2nd, and November 4th to November 13th, and November 15th through December 3rd, unquote. And here's what he extracted from Teresa's last day alive. Quote, on October 31, 2005, the Dassey computer was used to access the internet, but we didn't have the internet, at 6:05 a.m., 6:28 a.m., 6:31 a.m., 7 a.m., 9:33 a.m., 10:09 a.m., 1:08 p.m., and 1:51 p.m. Unquote. As for the CD that was previously withheld from Strang and Buting prior to Avery's trial, it did not require any specialized software, according to Hunt. The CD turned out 2,632 internet keyword searches for the following terms: body, 2,083; journal, 106; gun, 75; RAV, 74; MySpace, 61; fire, 51; gas, 50; stab, 32; cement, 23; bullet, 10; DNA, 3; bondage, 3; throat, 2; tires, 2; blood, 1. Quote, the CD contained 14,099 images recovered from the computer. The CD also contained 1,625 photos categorized as recovered pornography, which means that these images had been deleted and then recovered. A search of the MSN messages reveals communications between Bobby, the killer, and various individuals who identified themselves as teenage girls in the age range of 14 and 15. Bobby identified himself as being a 19-year-old. The messages have explicit sexual content. Unquote. Obviously, Avery's murder trial may have turned out drastically different had Kratz and Fassbender turned over to the defense all of the contents related to Bobby the Killer Dassey's computer. Quote, Bobby the Killer's trial testimony about being asleep from 6:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. would have been impeached by the contents of the 7 DVDs and 1 CD, which would have shown that he was awake and on the computer 8 times in that time frame, unquote, Zellner said in July 2018. Quote, the vast quantities of child pornography and the violent images of young females being tortured, sexually assaulted, and mutilated on the Dassey computer at times when only Bobby was home, in addition to his MSN sexually explicit conversations with 14 and 15-year-olds, as well as the word searches after the murder that indicate an interest in skeletons, dismemberment, knives through skin, fire, hello Gwen, handcuffs, guns, bullets, and blood, could have been utilized by trial defense counsel to impeach Bobby's, the killer's, credibilities with the jury by illustration of his knowledge and preoccupation with unique details of the crime, unquote. The CD in question also, quote, contains conversations between Bobby and 14 and 15-year-old girls. Bobby asks that the girls flash him using a webcam, unquote. But during Avery's trial, Kratz lauded Bobby Dassey. He made sure Bobby was considered a brave, impartial witness the jury could trust and believe, just like Kratz. Quote, again, a witness without any bias. How is somebody related to Stephen without bias? Okay, anyway. Unquote, Kratz told the jury during arguments. Quote, it is an individual that deserves to be given a lot of credit because sometime between 2:30 and 2:45, he sees Teresa Halbach. He sees her taking photographs. He sees her finishing the photo shoot. And he sees her walking up towards Uncle Steve's trailer, unquote. Nana's frozen. Is anybody else frozen? Buting and Strang both strongly assert that having access to the hidden CD that was kept from them by Kratz would have altered their defense strategy. Quote, I accepted without challenge Ken Kratz's assertion in a January 25, 2007 email to me that Veely's analysis of Steve, Teresa's, and Brendan's computers yielded nothing much of evidentiary value. with the belated production of the Veli forensic analysis to Mr. Avery's current lawyers in April 2018, it now appears to me from materials that Ms. Zellner and co-counsel have filed that the Veli forensic analysis, in fact, did include much of evidentiary value in direct contradiction to Mr. Kratz's claim. Thank you, Lynn. Given what I know now about the existence and content of the Veli forensic analysis, this looks to me like deceit. It looks like deceit about who used this computer. It looks like deceit about the evidentiary value of the information extracted from the computer. At a minimum, it looks like material information bearing on innocence that the state knowingly possessed, had exclusively in its possession, and withheld from the defense, unquote. See, and this to me again goes to ineffective assistance of counsel. Why would you just listen to the state when they go, who cares about this computer? Don't worry about this computer. Don't look here. It's not like Strang and Buting didn't have suspicions about Bobby. And Bobby lived in that home. So whether or not they're going to say this is Brendan's computer, Bobby is there. So it should have been looked at, period. Not just listen to Kratz going, there's nothing of evidentiary value on there. Not the droids you're looking for. Thank you, David. What else did Strang point out in his summer 2018 affidavit? Quote, we would have used the information in the Veli forensic analysis to support our motion by strengthening our showing that Bobby Dassey was an alternate suspect. At a minimum, the information would have gone to Bobby Dassey's availability and opportunity to commit violent crimes against and kill Teresa Halbach on October 31, 2005. To his sexual motive and other deviant motive to do so, and to the credibility of his alibi. We also would have sought to introduce evidence of incriminating internet searches that likely were made by Bobby Dassey, and would have confronted him on cross-examination with those searches and other information contained in the Veli forensic analysis, unquote. It is highly probable that if Kratz and Fassbender didn't selectively choose to keep the computer analysis CD from Buting and Strang, the trial would have had a different outcome. If Bobby Dassey's trial testimony was shown to be a complete farce, it is very likely the jury wouldn't have returned a guilty verdict for Avery, which I disagree with because of the fix being in with the jury. You know Carl Wardman was never going to say not guilty, no matter what was shown to him. He could be given a video of Bobby committing this crime, and he would still say Stephen was guilty. So I think at the very least, all Stephen would be able to get is a hung jury. But a hung jury is better than a guilty. Quote, information demonstrating a probability that Bobby Dassey used that computer to gain access to the internet on October 31, 2005, during times that he claimed to be asleep, and while Brendan Dassey was known to be at school that day, also would have been used in cross-examination of Bobby Dassey at trial. Had we known that information in the Detective Veli and Gary Hunt forensic analysis. I note that, in the end, the jury asked during deliberations for Bobby Dassey's testimony, unquote. Thank you, Kat. In retrospect, one has to wonder whether Kratz and Fassbender intentionally withheld the CD from Avery's trial lawyers because they suspected Bobby was the killer and realized the case had already reached the point of no return. Quote, current post-conviction counsel's expert, Mr. Hunt's forensic examination of the 7 DVDs revealed 128 violent images of young females being tortured, sexually assaulted, and mutilated, unquote, Zellner said. Quote, there were dozens of images depicting young females in pain because of having objects and fists forced into their vaginas. The images also depicted dismembered, decapitated, and drowned bodies of young females. Many of the female images, both alive and deceased, bear an uncanny resemblance to Ms. Halbach. Quote, two pictures were found in the unallocated space, the first showing Ms. Halbach and Mr. Avery, the second showing only Ms. Halbach. The pictures were in an unallocated space because someone had deleted them. There is no way to know when these images were acquired or deleted. Therefore, prior counsel was deprived of a complete compilation of all the violent images, word searches, timelines, messages, and recovered images that had been deleted during the Halbach murder investigation. The state's forensic examiner was also suppressed. All of this material could have been used to establish Bobby as a third-party Denny suspect, unquote. But couldn't the prosecution come back and say, hey, wait a minute, there were 4 boys living under the Dassey roof. Isn't it possible any one of them was the deviant pervert constantly viewing this dirty, disgusting smut that was messing with their mind? When Zellner's expert utilized his 2017 computer forensic tracking software on the computer, Hunt uncovered a total of 667 internet searches for sexual images, quote, on weekdays when Bobby was the only member of his family at home during the week from 6:30 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. All other Dassey family members who lived at the residence were either at work or school during those hours, unquote. And Stephen's at work. Yeah, he works where he lives, but he's working. He's not, I'm sorry, Carla. I'm not sorry, Carla. But I know you like to try and say it could have been Stephen that went in there or Tom Yanda. They're both at work. It's Bobby. Stop trying to cover for Bobby. You don't even like the kid. Anyway, prior to Teresa's disappearance, Barb and her husband, Tom Yanda, had split up and he was no longer staying on Avery Road. Quote, according to Barb, Tom Yanda moved out before October 15, 2005 and never looked at pornography on the Dassey computer. Bobby was the only person at the Dassey residence between 6 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. on the weekdays. During the week, Blaine and Brendan were in school until 3:45 p.m. Brian lived with his girlfriend and worked during the day. Barb also worked a day shift, and Tom Yanda no longer lived at the residence, unquote. Zellner also enlisted the expertise of retired FBI behavioral analyst Greg McCrary to weigh in on the matter. McCrary, quote, opines that these Dassey computer searches demonstrate the obsessively compulsive nature of Bobby Dassey's internet searches and the fascination with sexual acts that involve the infliction of pain, torture, and humiliation on females, and an equally disturbing fascination with viewing dead female bodies. Barb hired someone to reformat the Dassey computer prior to law enforcement seizing it. The reformatting resulted in a number of images being removed during the critical period before and after the murder, unquote. And the before the murder, let me just point out that, and it also mentions this in the book, we've already been through this before, Bobby paid attention to all the prior times Teresa Halbach had been there. So he's already obsessing on the girl and looking stuff up prior to her last visit there. So that's why there would be things on the computer prior that now you want removed. But since Kratz was liable to say and spout out anything, couldn't the special prosecutor now pontificate this was all Stephen Avery's doing? Perhaps Avery was sneaking into his sister's trailer during the daytime when she wasn't around to fill his mind with dirty and wicked fantasies that would drive him over the edge and make him murder Teresa. He had his own computer. He had his own internet. And he was alone because his girlfriend was in jail. He's not going to that computer to go look that crap up. Quote, the state attempted to convince the jury that Mr. Avery's motive in setting up the appointment with Ms. Halbach on October 31, 2005, was to lure her to his property to sexually assault her, unquote, Zellner said. Quote, during the searches of the Avery property, the state focused on trying to gather pornography from Mr. Avery's residence. However, a forensic analysis performed by the state's examiner of Mr. Avery's computer in 2006 revealed no searches of sexual images, much less violent images and dead bodies. Mr. Avery never accessed the Dassey computer. He did not have the password for the computer, nor did he possess a key to the Dassey residence, which was locked when no one was home. Mr. Avery only entered the residence with permission or a Dassey family member. Unquote. Furthermore, Avery would be eliminated as being the deviant culprit on all but 15 of the 128 computer searches just by the fact that he was thrown in jail on November 9, 2005. Quote, Brendan would be eliminated from all but 26 of the 128 searches at issue by having been arrested on March 1, 2006. And then here's a picture of the FBI McCrary guy. Now we go to chapter 26, Fantasy Life. We are on page 297 of 361. Anne Wolbert Burgess, PhD, has co-authored 24 books, 30 book chapters, and more than 160 peer-reviewed articles. She teamed up with internationally noted FBI profilers John Douglas and Robert Ressler to co-author the book Sexual Homicide: Patterns and Motives. It was her research on the book in particular that gave her a window into the mind of a murderer whose mind is fried by constant visual images of violent X-rated pornography. Quote, we interviewed 36 sexual murderers, and we concluded that as a group, they had several traits in common. 1. They had a long-standing preoccupation and preference for a very active fantasy life. 2. They were preoccupied with violent, sexualized thoughts and fantasies. In my opinion, in reviewing Mr. Hunt's affidavits, the obvious preoccupation with violent pornography, which includes torturing young females and dismembering and or mutilating female bodies, over time would result in a justification for a killing. My opinion is based, in part, upon a review of sexual images contained in the Dassey CD and 7 DVDs Mr. Greg McCrary's second supplemental affidavit and Mr. Hunt's analysis of the Internet searches, including the timing and frequency of the searches, as well as description of the violent pornographic images. Unquote. Dr. Burgess believes that McCrary's analysis of Teresa's death being a sexually motivated crime was right on the money. Quote, the Dassey computer examination by Mr. Hunt also revealed that Bobby Dassey was untruthful when he testified that he had been asleep on October 31, 2005 until 2:30 p.m. I also agree with Mr. McCrary that Bobby should have been considered a prime suspect because of his untruthful statements during the investigation. Combined with the nature of his internet searches, unquote. Burgess pointed out that 22 search terms described forcing objects into female vaginas. 37 search terms described violent accidents and violent car crashes with images of dead bodies. 13 searches for drowned, dead, or diseased female bodies. 65 searches for describing the infliction of violence on females, including fisting and images of females experiencing pain. Quote, further, Mr. Hunt determined that 562 of the searches were performed on 10 weekdays. Mr. Hunt described folders created on the Dassey computer entitled Teresa Halbach, Stephen Avery, and DNA. And here's a picture of Dr. Burgess. The searches speak to the compulsive nature of the offender, specifically the sadism, as the fantasy life translates into the compulsion to act out the sadistic fantasy, example, a sexual homicide, unquote, Dr. Burgess said. Quote, a person obsessed with violence is more likely to commit a murder than someone not so obsessed, unquote. Here's what Dr. Burgess informed the court regarding the computer disk that Kratz chose to hide from Strang and Buting back in 2006. Quote, the images on the CD also contain blindfolded and bound girls, dismembered bodies, and bestiality. All of these images display a fascination with dominance. Who else has a fascination with dominance? Control and mutilation, which is characteristic of many sexual homicides. The mutilation of Ms. Halbach's body is consistent with a fascination with the morbid images found on the Dassey computer of dead and dismembered human bodies, unquote. Dr. Burgess has been recognized by courts as an expert witness on child pornography, crime classification, offender typology, rape victims, rape trauma, and serial offenders. Quote, all of the opinions offered within this affidavit are based upon a reasonable degree of scientific certainty in the field of psychiatric nursing, unquote, she said. Dr. Burgess has been a professor of psychiatric nursing at Boston University since 2001. Quote, I have also reviewed Stephen Avery's second supplemental affidavit in which he describes Bobby commenting on Teresa Halbach after each appointment that she had at the Avery salvage yard. Specifically, Mr. Avery says that Bobby would say, I see that your girlfriend was here again. Since Bobby was never present when Ms. Halbach was on the property, Mr. Avery concluded that he must have been watching her from a window. Clearly, Bobby had developed an unhealthy obsession with Ms. Halbach. It is also significant that Bobby has always maintained that he did not know that Ms. Halbach was coming to the property, but there is a conflicting report from the Wisconsin Public Defender Office dated November 23, 2005, in which Bobby admitted that he knew Ms. Halbach was coming to the property that day, unquote. From her perspective, what was not recovered from Bobby Dassey's home computer during the police investigation into Teresa's murder case is just as important, if not more striking, than what authorities and computer forensic experts did actually find. Quote, the Dassey computer examination by Mr. Hunt revealed 8 significant periods of deletions related to the times that Ms. Halbach visited the Avery property, unquote, Burgess said. Quote, it is not unusual. An organized offender would try to cover up his fantasies by deleting files from a computer. Furthermore, I agree with Mr. McCrary that it is highly significant in any investigation if there is an attempt to delete or destroy records. Clearly, the person deleting or destroying records has to be considered as a suspect in any homicide investigation, unquote. And so that's where the chicken and the egg happens. What does Barb know and when did she know it? Why would Barb want to wipe that computer? During the closing arguments in front of the jurors from Manitowoc County, Kratz told them, quote, "We could start with the moment of the visual, or with the image of that man, Stephen Avery, standing outside of a big bonfire with flames over the roof, or at least over the garage roof, and the silhouette of Stephen Avery with the bonfire in the background and the observations made by some witnesses." Can you all picture that? Can you picture that as a moment in time? And that moment, by the way, although dramatic and although important, should tell the whole story, unquote, Kratz told the jurors at the end of the 5-week-long trial. Quote, "That moment of Stephen Avery after the murder was committed, of Stephen Avery tending the fire, of Stephen Avery disposing and mutilating the body of 25-year-old Teresa Halbach. That would be a good place to start. But I'm not going to start there. I'm going to start somewhere else. I'm going to start with the Toyota RAV4. Okay. The Toyota RAV4, which was owned by Teresa Halbach, which was discovered on the 5th of November at the Avery Salvage property. Because the discovery of that RAV4, the discovery of Teresa Halbach's vehicle, changed the course of not only this case, but the clues and the secrets found in that vehicle changed the lives of everybody in this room. Look around, everybody. The clues found in that vehicle on the 5th of November changed everybody's lives, yours included. Your lives will never be the same. Ours won't. Families won't. That moment is particularly important, and that is where we're going to begin." Unquote. That was vintage Kratz. As far as her academic background, Burgess obtained her bachelor's degree from Boston University, her Master of Science from the University of Maryland, and her Doctorate of Nursing Science from Boston University. She also has an honorary degree from the University of San Diego. Here's what Dr. Burgess had to say, given her dedication and expertise in getting to know the psyche of the criminal mind, the deviant sexual offender who gravitates into the abyss. Quote, "The offender in the Halbach murder would be classified as an organized offender who plans, thinks things through, and tries to cover his tracks by deleting incriminating files, interjecting himself into the investigation as a primary witness for the state, misleading the investigators about the timeline and events surrounding the murder, and would be likely to attempt to plant evidence and frame another for the murder," unquote, Dr. Burgess concludes. Quote, "The offender would keep secret his commission of the sadistic murder of Ms. Halbach. The police should have considered Bobby a prime suspect in the murder of Ms. Halbach and should not have eliminated him as quickly as they did," unquote. While finishing this book, the author reached out to Zellner, the country's leading wrongful conviction lawyer, to gain her insight into the killing and dismemberment of the young auto trader photographer who never made it home to her family's farm on Halloween 2005. Quote, "Bobby has been described by family members as being a very quiet, socially awkward teenager who never dated," unquote, Zellner said. Quote, "He spent a great deal of time on the computer, which was in his bedroom. Our experts have developed a profile of the individual doing the computer searches for violence pornography. The individual was obsessed with inflicting sexual violence on young females and displayed a strong interest in viewing deceased, mutilated female bodies. My experts believe the individual is very disturbed and seems to hate women," unquote. Zellner says she has visited with Avery one-on-one about Bobby since this was his nephew, and he saw him often from September 2003 until his arrest in November 2005. Quote, "According to Mr. Avery, Bobby became increasingly obsessed with Ms. Halbach in the few months before her death," unquote, Zellner said. Mr. Taddock, Bobby's stepfather, has a history of domestic violence. Bobby and Mr. Taddock have told multiple lies about the events of October 31, 2005. The police reports demonstrate that Bobby and Mr. Taddock went out of his way to try to get the police to charge Stephen. As early as November 5, 2005, Bobby tried to implicate Stephen in the murder. Mr. Taddock talked obsessively about the case at work during the investigation. Both Bobby and Mr. Taddock changed their stories to fit the state's narrative. I believe Bobby in particular completely duped the cops, planted the bones and blood to frame Mr. Avery, and willingly and enthusiastically became the state's star witness, unquote. And the state's star witness was also aided by the dubious testimony from his future stepfather, Scott Taddock, who furnished him with an alibi, actually an alibi for both men, around the exact time of Teresa's disappearance and killing. That day, Taddock failed to show up for his work shift. He claimed he made 2 separate visits to a local hospital to visit his mother, who was apparently undergoing back surgery in Green Bay. Keep in mind, this was the same woman Taddock tried to beat up and had called several despicable, vulgar names during an explosive outburst that led to his arrest by police just a few years earlier. And I don't understand why people don't talk to his mother. Quote, that afternoon, or that morning, I was up by my mother, unquote, Taddock testified under oath during questioning by Kratz at the murder trial. Quote, then I left her and I went to the woods hunting. I went to my trailer and then I went to the woods hunting. Archery hunting, bow hunting, archery, unquote. Next, Kratz asked, quote, about what time was it that you got out into the woods or that you got to your deer hunting stand, unquote. About 3 p.m. On your way to deer hunting, that would be just before 3 p.m. Did you observe anybody on the highway? Yes, I did. I saw Bobby Dassey on Highway 147. I was going west and he was going east. Where is it, Mr. Taddock, that you hunt? Or at least that day, where was it that you were going hunting? In Kewaunee, unquote. In the minds of the jurors, Taddock's testimony iced any suspicion toward Bobby as being the more likely killer. At the same time, Taddock helped bury Avery, a man he hated because he resented the fact that Avery was in line to collect a multi-million-dollar settlement for the 1985 wrongful conviction case. And because he knew the cops investigating Teresa's death were not street-smart individuals, Taddock realized he could essentially say whatever he wanted, and no one would question his statements or question his motives. Quote, Taddock went on to indicate that Stephen has a large amount of control over Brendan, as well as the rest of the Dassey and Avery families. He states he believes this due to the large amount of money or large amount of dollars that Stephen was possibly going to be coming into. He stated he has known Stephen approximately 2 years. Taddock went on to indicate Brendan spends most of his time with Stephen and that Stephen has taken Brendan up north a lot. Scott went on to indicate his gut feeling is that Stephen had some sort of sexual relationship with Brendan, but he has nothing to back that feeling up, unquote. I don't even want to start ranting about that one. During Avery's trial, Taddock made sure that he helped the prosecution nail Avery. Quote, I saw a big fire, he testified. It was a big fire. It was bigger than normal. They were almost as tall as the garage, 8 feet, 10 feet, I don't know, 10 feet maybe. 10 feet tall, the flames were. It was a big fire? Kratz asked his friendly witness. It was a big fire, Taddock repeated for the jury. Where did you go then, Mr. Taddock? I went back to where I was living at the time, the trailer house on 147, about 2 miles away, unquote. Now, when I was friends with Scott Taddock, I've talked about this before, and when I was at his house, I asked him about the fire and how tall was the fire. And he told me the police kept poking and prodding him to say that the fire was bigger than it was. And he doesn't recall the fire. So take that for what you want. When Bobby Dassey was initially interviewed by the police, Bobby told them how he and Tadek had crossed paths while driving past one another around the same time as Teresa's murder, going the opposite directions on Highway 147. Suspiciously, when Bobby was pressed to remember where the two saw one another on the road just a matter of days earlier, he couldn't offer a definitive answer. Quote, Bobby indicated that as he was traveling on State Highway 147 toward the property he hunts deer on, he did observe an individual known to him as Scott Tadek. Bobby indicated that Scott would be able to verify precisely what time he had seen Bobby. Dietering's, unquote. Dietering's report 5 days after Teresa disappeared showed. Dietering's report, though, was hollow. There was a lack of follow-up questioning. The most obvious question was not asked of Bobby. That is, how would Bobby know that Scott Tadek would be able to know the exact time that the two men passed one another? When Avery stood trial, Dean Strang questioned Tadek about his whereabouts around the time of Teresa's murder, as well as the story about Tadek and Bobby seeing one another on the highway. Quote, it's a 15-minute drive or something like that to your hunting spot? Approximately, yeah. And this is when, on your way to hunting, is when you see Bobby Dassey? Correct. He's going east in the other direction on Highway 147? Correct. Speed limit on 147? 55. And the two of you obviously are going in opposite directions? Yes. And so you pass each other and you are later able to tell the police that Bobby was going deer hunting? Yes. How do you know that? How do I know that is because Bobby Dassey was going to the trailer where I lived to hunt behind it. Let me understand. He's going to hunt deer right behind your trailer? Yes. But you don't hunt deer right behind your trailer? Occasionally, yes. And when did he tell you about this hunting trip that he planned right behind your trailer? I don't recall him telling me. He had permission from the landlord to hunt there. So you figured since you saw him driving east on Highway 147, he must be going hunting? Yes. Anybody else you see going west on 147 to go hunting so far as you know? Bobby Dassey. And yet you told him that you were going hunting? No. How would he have known that you were going hunting? Because I was in my camouflage clothes. You were in your camouflage coat? Yes. In your green Ford Ranger? Yep. Passing one another at 55 miles an hour? Nope. When I passed Bobby, I was probably only doing maybe 25 miles an hour tops. He was slowing down to turn in my driveway, and I was driving up 147. That totally doesn't sound right at all there. So Bobby was already going to his house when that's not making sense. Okay, let me get back into it. I'm flummoxed by that paragraph. I see. And so you surmise that he would have known you were going deer hunting because he would have seen you in your camouflage clothing? Yes. Did you go hunting with anybody that day? No. Unquote. As it turned out, Tadek, who has a reputation of being a compulsive liar, wound up giving numerous inconsistent statements to the police and in court in regard to Teresa's murder. The size of the fire he saw in Avery's backyard changed dramatically from his initial interviews with police to the point of him serving as a main witness for Kratz. He also told police he went and visited his mother at the Green Bay Hospital 2 separate times on the day of the murder, and nobody in the police investigation made any attempt to verify either visit. In addition to the dubious story about seeing Bobby on the highway, Tadek insisted Barbianda left his place that night after watching Prison Break. I'm not going to say anything right now. I'll see if he says this. Later on, he changed that story and claimed she spent the night with him. The later story gave him a rock-solid alibi to refute any allegations he might have been involved in burning and dismembering Teresa's body, along with Bobby Dassey, after the skies grew dark after slaying, perhaps at the Manitowoc County gravel pit where the pelvic bones were later found. All right, I'm going to keep reading here, but I need to try and remember Prison Break. During a tape-recorded interview with Detering and DCI agent Kevin Heimerl, Bobby admitted that he did not leave to go into work at the Fisher Hamilton manufacturing plant in Manitowoc until almost 2 hours later than normal. Dassey, quote, Dassey indicated he stayed home until 11:30 p.m. on October 31, 2005, and then left for work at Hamilton Manufacturing, unquote, their reports state. There appeared to be no follow-up questions as to why Dassey didn't go into work as scheduled. On February 27, 2006, when Bobby underwent a follow-up interview, Detering asked him again about his activities on the day of the homicide. This time, Bobby told the police, quote, he got up at approximately 9 p.m., got ready for work. Bobby indicated that when he was leaving for work at approximately 9:30 p.m., he noticed that Stephen was having a bonfire. He estimated that the flames were 5 to 6 feet in height. He stated that it was a good-sized fire and that Stephen has had fires there in the past. Duh. He stated he worked from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. the following day, and when he arrived home, he noticed nothing unusual and that the fire was out, unquote. In late 2017, Greg McCrary filed a second affidavit with Wisconsin's criminal justice system in reference to Bobby Dassey. Quote, the fact that Bobby Dassey became the key witness for the prosecution and that his testimony placed Teresa Halbach on the property, walking over to Stephen's trailer after she completed her assignment, interjected him into the prosecution in a way that should have raised the suspicions of reasonably trained detectives if that testimony is untrue. Based upon the affidavit of Brian Dassey, it appears that Bobby Dassey's testimony was untrue. In my opinion, a prudent investigator would have considered Bobby Dassey a suspect and would have investigated him as such. There is no evidence that authorities ever investigated, much less eliminated, him as a suspect or investigated the discrepancies in his trial testimony, unquote. McCrary also offered the same sentiments regarding Tadek, who had a lengthy history of abusing women, and he was at the center of the controversial letter that arrived at the Green Bay post office, the famous Sikaki letter. The letter made reference to a body being burned up at 3 a.m. at an aluminum smelter, which is where Tadek has worked. Quote, Mr. Tadek worked the third shift at the Wisconsin Aluminum Foundry. The note, which was never thoroughly investigated by law enforcement, is potentially of great evidentiary value because the note was sent on November 9, 2005, and it was not disclosed to the public until November 11, 2005, that Ms. Halbach had allegedly been burned on the Avery burn pit, unquote, Zellner said. But that's not all. Quote, Mr. Tadek's nickname at work was Skinny, and according to a current employee, many of the shift workers are not totally literate. It is a reasonable inference that a semi-literate employee might have misspelled the word skinny in the note, unquote. At no point during Teresa's murder probe did anybody in Wisconsin law enforcement attempt to get the fingerprints or DNA samples from Tadek to compare with the evidence in the case, including the 8 fingerprints that were recovered from the RAV4 that did not belong to Avery, Brendan Dassey, or Bobby Dassey, among others in the family. Quote, at a minimum, Mr. Tadek should have been asked to provide his DNA and fingerprints so that they could be compared to crime scene evidence, Zellner said. Mr. Toddock's failure to respond to Kevin Romlow's text about seeing the RAV4 at the turnaround by the old dam on November 3 and 4, 2005, before the discovery of the Halbach vehicle on the Avery property, is also suspicious. Unquote. Romlow, of course, is the man who came forward in 2017 providing a sworn affidavit about his first-hand experience of seeing the RAV4 abandoned after Teresa's disappearance, but not on the Avery property, as Kratz represented. Quote, I went to the old dam with Mr. Romlow and my investigator, unquote, Zellner said. Quote, he is absolutely telling the truth about seeing the Halbach vehicle. He is also telling the truth about the Senex station missing poster in the window regarding Ms. Halbach and her vehicle. Some people think he is mistaken about speaking to Colborne, being it was Colborne's day off and he would not have been in uniform. I find that point to be unpersuasive because Colborne was involved in the biggest investigation of his life. I do not believe that he would take a day off in the middle of the investigation. He wanted to run for sheriff. I believe he would have worn his uniform on his day off because it would have given him a little bit of authority. No cop or witness has come forward giving Colborne an alibi for Mr. Romlow's claim, nor does anyone say they saw him in plain clothes on November 4, 2005. This is a cop who absolutely does not write up reports, if at all, until years later. Mr. Romlow's timeline of seeing Ms. Halbach's vehicle on the early afternoon of November 4, 2005, and Mr. Siebert's timeline of seeing her vehicle drive onto Mr. Avery's property shortly thereafter match. Mr. Romlow has no motive to lie and had moved from Wisconsin to Michigan years before. Unquote. Romlow was hardly the only person who remembered seeing the RAV4 concealed off State Highway 147 in the days prior to its startling appearance on the back end of Avery's property. And that's where we're going to end today. We just have a teeny tiny bit left, but we'll be picking that up then on Monday, which will be chapter 27, titled Damaged. And that is page 311 out of 361. So we have 50 pages left that we will complete on Monday and then discuss what we read. Prison Break. Prison Break at that time was 2 hours. Sometimes it would be a 2-hour long episode. Sometimes it was 2-hour episodes. Prison Break, and thank you, Kat. Prison Break aired here, and my time zone is the same as Manitowoc. So Fox is what Prison Break aired on. Fox only shows network television from 7 to 9 p.m. So the times that Scott and Barb talk about going to the hospital and getting back to watch Prison Break, and they claim they were watching it live, not recorded, that doesn't match. Prison Break starts at 7 p.m. and it runs from 7 to 9. Doesn't fit. So maybe Prison Break is what they usually watched on Mondays at 7 o'clock, which, fun fact, Prison Break was filmed at the old Joliet prison here in Illinois. Joliet is where John Farrick lives. Just, connecting everything together there. And I've gone to that old prison and taken some pictures. And they now have it open. Well, it's not really open. there's set times that you can go and get a tour. But they don't. I went for the grand opening thing that they were doing, and then you had to wait this big long line to go in there, and Blues Brothers was also filmed there, by the way. Um, but they didn't really. You didn't get to go in all that much, so. I'm toying with using some of my political connections so I can get in and see more of the prison, just because it's so old and I find it fascinating to go look at this old creepy prison that's in Joliet, Illinois. Um yeah, so Prison Break, no, a cat. And when Stephen was talking to Jody at 9, I think he even said, "Oh, she's leaving again." Yep, he did, because they were making fun of how she's never at home with her kids. So, yep, absolutely happened. So, Monday, 1 p.m. will be the last day, and we will finish Wrecking Crew. I don't know when I'll pop in here and do open forum discussion. I want to talk about the rally because I've been thinking a lot about that. So, and I want to talk about the Kevin Romlo stuff, but I want to play with this computer too and see if there's anything I can be doing on my end to make it so things aren't screwing up so bad here on these videos. I don't know if it's me or what. I'm not. I don't know technology, but. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining Story Time again. And I will see you Monday, 1 p.m. Central, if not before. Investigation continues.